Now 30 days have passed with the Ironmaster Super Bench Pro, and it is easily the best bench I have ever used, but also the most expensive. And while it is the best bench I've used to date, I would not recommend this if you didn't go and buy some of the attachments I also have with this bench. But if you do get the attachments, I'm going to lay out some reasons why I think this is the best bench I have ever used right now, as well as some things I'd like to see improved with later models. So as a quick overview, the Ironmaster Super Bench Pro can hold up to 1,000 pounds of weight or 600 pounds when it's set to an incline. So for me, this weight capacity is way above what I need, which is great because my Newell bells are the heaviest dumbbells I personally own that together weigh 160 pounds, and with me at around 185 pounds, I'm nowhere near the max limit of 1,000 or 600 pound weight limits. So the first iteration of this bench does have 11 different angles ranging from 5 to 85 degrees. And one unique thing about this bench is it has a detachable seat, so you can actually remove it from the bench itself and just have a flat bench if that's what you want to use, or put it into one of the two slots to add a seat on it if you're doing something like overhead pressing. And what I really love about this bench is the height off the ground is pretty much perfect. So some of my older benches, one was way too high at 21 inches, and the other one's just right about 17. So this one comes in around the 17-inch range as well. But know that this is by far my favorite overall stability bench and height for a bench that I've used to date. Now before we jump into my pros and cons list, there is a version 2 of this bench that just launched, and it comes with a couple differences, where one of them being it has the degree of angle you have underneath the bench, where mine currently doesn't show that, and then it also has a third seat height, which is actually one of my cons as to my first version, so they're actually fixing this in version 2, so just know that version 2 has a higher seat if you need to be a little higher off the ground. So with that, let's jump into the pros and cons list of the Ironmaster Super Bench Pro, starting off with the pro list. So for my first pro, one of the things I always look into when I buy personal home fitness equipment is, does it fit in my closet? This is one thing for me because I just want it out of the way and out of sight when it's not in use. Now luckily, the depth of my closet is 24 inches, and this one, when you fold it up and you put it up standing vertically, does fit in the closet just perfectly fine. So that is one checkbox that I have where it fits in my closet and stays out of sight when I'm not doing my workouts. My next pro is that with the added attachments, and I do have the pull-up bar and dip bar attachments, that this does everything I personally need in my workout programs, as well as the ones you would see on my website to do your home workouts, as long as you have a pair of dumbbells. The only thing it is missing is the ability to do inverted rows. Now they might have a separate attachment, I could look into this for the future, but as the items I have right now, that is the only thing I might add in here that I would do in my own home programming, but it's a minor con as I can just do other things like bent over rows, chest supported rows, in place of inverted rows instead. And I actually think those other exercises are a bit better, but if you want to do inverted rows, you might need to look elsewhere. Now I come in at 5 feet 11 inches tall, and this bench is perfect for me. I mean, perfect height and everything. The only thing that doesn't match my height is the seat height on the bench, which I will get into my cons, as it is a little low, but with version 2 again, they are coming out with a new one, but I'll get to that later. However, everything else in this bench is perfect for someone who is 5'11", or I'll just say around the 6 feet tall range. If you are shorter, this probably wouldn't be an issue either, as it is a lower bench to the ground, and the pull-up bar has different slots on it, so the different holes on it you can set it up to make the pull-up bar actually pretty low to the ground overall for someone a bit shorter. My next pro is that because this thing can withstand 1,000 pounds when flat and 600 at an incline, I'm really never going to break this thing. Also, the attachments are made out of like straight steel, so just these full metal constructions, while pretty heavy in general, are something I'm probably not ever going to break. So that's a big plus for me. They are a bit bulky, which I'll get into, but other than that, the build quality of this thing is far exceeding anything I've used before, while still being a decently small form factor. So the padding on the bench is also pretty nice. I've had no issues with it. All my benches so far have really had decent padding overall, so for me, I really haven't seen any issues with this one so far. The only one I did run into is an old flybird bench. One of the sides actually kind of like got crushed in, so that was the all black one. But I don't really use that one anymore because it is 21 inches off the ground and my red one's a little better. but this one is again by far better than those ones and just as comfortable as any bench I've used before now. Now, if you want one of my biggest pros for this bench, it is the overall stability. By far, out of any bench I have personally used in my small office home gyms, this one is the most stable. I think it's because the base is a little bit wider. Also, the feet are more flat to the ground in general. And just how it's built, because you can't like bring up the middle either. So it's just one larger big bench. So this one, I don't think I would ever be able to topple it over. Some of the older benches for like things like hip thrusts, I put it up against a wall. This one I do not need to do that. It's just not going to fall over. I'd really have to go out of my way to actually knock this thing over in use. And now after 30 days, I've been pleasantly surprised by how awesome the attachments have been outside of how big they are. So when I'm actually using them, they are way more stable than I thought. Yes, there is a little bit of wiggle room when using things like the pull-up bar. That's just going to be given in there as it's just how it's built. And same with the dip bar. But if you have nice, slower, and controlled movements, this is a great device to add those attachments with. Again, it's very, very small movements compared to what I thought it was going to be, and does the job very, very well, especially when it comes to me doing pull-ups from home and getting off my door frame, which always has more inherent risk than using something like this. And one quick note, when you do install the dip bar or the pull-up bar attachments, or if you buy any other attachment for that matter, there is a little knob where you actually turn it to tighten the attachment inside. So make sure you do that, as it does increase the stability of this quite a bit, so it's not rattling around inside where you put it in. This actually kind of like locks it in place to make it more comfortable and stable in use. And one pro I did run into while using this is you can actually do calf raises on this thing. While the beam on the bottom is pretty small in general, it does allow you to put your feet on it and have your ankles off the end so you can get a bit more range of motion. So this was a little surprise pro that I actually ran into, because I was usually using my step platform. It's like a 4-inch platform that you can stand on off the ground. However, you probably don't even need it if you have this, because you could just hold the dumbbells on your sides and use that little like 1-inch or so beam off the ground to do things like calf raises, and again, get a bit more range of motion in the exercise. And one last pro I did end up testing just to see if it was possible is, can the pull-up bar with the bench support my resistance band setup? So using the loop bands with my bar, or even just the handles, and doing many of the pull down or even the cable crunches with resistance bands. And to my surprise, this worked very, very, very well. It pretty much stayed exactly where it was, just right in place. I didn't feel like it was gonna break or anything. So it's a big plus for me. Again, now I don't even need to use a door anchor in order to do these two movements. I can just set up the bench if I'd like to and do pull downs. Again, allowing me to remove any way of damaging my door, which is always a concern for me when doing my home workouts. So that was quite a lot of pros. Now let's jump into my cons list of the Ironmaster Super Bench Pro version 1. So my first con with this bench is going to be the price. With it being over $400 just for the bench, that is a lot more than I think most people on my channel are willing to spend. However, I could be wrong, as most of you are looking for a gym between $500 and $1,000. So who knows, this might fit right within your budget. But again, this is by far the overall best bench I have used. But again, it is the most costly bench, especially when adding in those attachments. Not to mention, it is the most bulky bench when you add those in as well. One other thing is that it is a bit heavier than I expected, so you can pick it up. It's about 64 pounds when I look it up online, so I can pick it up and move it around, but I'd much rather you like wheel it around if you can. So my room in here is rug, so I can just kind of wheel it around without like scratching up the floors and stuff, which makes it kind of nice, and I can just put it up and fold it into my closet. But if you're someone who needs to like pick it up, it might be something you kind of stay away from, because it is kind of bulky and awkward to carry around. But again, I can pick it up. It's not like the heaviest thing in the world for me, just not something I regularly want to do versus just wheeling it in and out of my closet. And also those attachments, especially that pull-up bar, is very bulky, and the number one thing I really probably don't like about this product overall. While I love being able to do pull-ups, putting that thing in my closet is a pain. I kind of have to like wiggle it in and out of the room based on how my door is set up. So it's not the most fun product piece for me to have, but it is the main reason I got this bench to begin with, because I can get off my door frame to do pull-ups. Now, when setting up attachments with this bench, make sure that you actually get the bench in place first. So I ran into problems early on where I was like setting it a little up and then maybe putting the pull-up bar into it, then putting in position, then putting it up. But that's actually the wrong way, in my opinion. I think you can do this. As long as your ceiling is high enough, or if you're like me, have a ceiling fan with a light, just make sure there's enough clearance so that you put the bench in place, set it to that vertical position if we're using the pull-up bar for this example, and then you can just put it right in place, but it is pretty heavy. Now, one thing you have to watch out for is when taking it out because it's top heavy. So what happens is as soon as that bottom piece clears the bench, it just tries to flip over on you. So what I like to do is as I pull it out, I bring my backhand to the other side. So as soon as it releases, that as it swings out, I just grab it with my hand right away. So it can't like swing over and crash onto the floor. So definitely something to watch out for. But again, it's not hard to catch. It's not like the heaviest thing I've ever done before. But just know that may happen the first time. So watch out when putting the pull-up bar, especially in and out of the attachment area. And the dip bar has been super easy. It's a small little handle piece. You're not going to have any trouble getting that in and out. So it's really just the pull-up bar you have to watch out for of the attachments that I have. So with the bench and attachments, one con I have is basically how my closet looks when you open it up. So instead of having the nice, neat like dumbbells, dip bar station, and then maybe like my resistance bands on the other side and bench, now I have like a big bench. I have this gigantic attachment for my pull-ups, and then like the dumbbells, and then the dip bar station attachment on top of those. So it's not quite as neat as it used to be. It kind of is a more messy closet. Luckily, it's closed most of the time. But again, one of those cons I personally have, this kind of just a pet peeve of my own. It's not really like a major con, just something that annoys me personally. All right, now getting back to the seat height. So with version 2, this has been kind of fixed. I haven't used it yet, so I haven't tested. But they have now 3 slots you can put the detachable seat into. So this seat does have like a metal bar that goes around the outside, and then you can just kind of sit on it. It does kind of feel awkward at first, but it does hold my weight pretty well. So they made a third height so that if you're taller like me, you can kind of sit up more, where before I'm kind of sitting down where my knees are actually bent more than the 90 degrees. So I'm actually like at an acute angle with my knees instead. So just know that they did make a new one in version 2, but for version 1, it is a little low to the ground for me as someone at 5'11", around 6 feet tall. It's not the end of the world. I can still do my exercises just fine. Just know it does feel a little low for my current height. And with that seat, that curved beam that goes around the outside can get in the way of some exercises. For example, I was doing seated shoulder shrugs, but when you put the dumbbells by your side, as you lower them, my right hand will actually hit that beam because it's going out and around, where my left side doesn't have the issue because there is no beam to hit because it's only on one side. So kind of annoying. With this, I just have to slide farther up on the seat, and it's fine because I'll now miss it. But if you have really big dumbbells, that might be hard to get around. You might need to like slide over so you're mostly over that little curved area. So you're just clearing that. But just know it is kind of annoying when you get to that one exercise. A smaller con, but one nonetheless. And my last con is the size of the pull-up bar attachment. So, and I mean the length of the pull-up bar. It goes like out like normal pull-up, and then it has the kind of bent angles on the sides like you see in most gyms. But I think it's just overkill how wide this is. I'm never going to do pull-ups that wide. I understand other people might, so maybe this is just a con personally for me, but I never really go that much further than shoulder width apart, so I think they could have just stayed in that range. So maybe if they had something where I can like remove the ends or like make it an attachment where you can add them in, maybe that's something. I don't know if that would just be an integrity issue where those could fall off, but for me, I just feel like they're a little big, and if they weren't that wide, it would be easier for me to put into my closet. Again, maybe just something for my setup, but a con for me personally nonetheless. So with all of that, how am I going to use the Ironmaster Super Bench Pro version 1 moving forward? So I am going to use this as my go-to setup. That doesn't mean I'm not going to look into version 2, as I might try that and compare the two to see which one I want. There is another slight difference in version 2 where the seat itself has kind of like beveled edges, where it kind of like the top, I guess, is a little more narrow than the bottom. I'm not sure why they made that change. Maybe it's to match what current benches are like in gyms. I'm not quite sure, but maybe that's a bit better. Again, you can also see what the degree of the bench is, so maybe if you need to save which one you're using from before, you're doing something like incline thing or whatnot, you can remember what the incline is. So that's kind of nice. And then of course, the third seat height would be something I'd be interested in checking out. But it should keep or use my original attachments, which is really cool. That means I don't need to buy new ones. So that'd be awesome if I can do that and really like test out the two benches. But for now, I'll just be using version 1 until I decide if I want to spend the money on version 2. Not to mention, I'm pretty sure version 2 is a lot more expensive, so I'll have to look into that as well. But I have really loved using this bench in general. Again, I just feel way more stable than ever before. Having the ability to do pull-ups and feel safe about it has been great, as well as using the small dip bar attachment has really just rounded things out. The only thing I lost was the ability to do inverted rows, which to me is kind of like a It's an exercise I like, but exercise I don't really like because it's hard to overload. Yes, I could throw on a backpack, but that does feel a little awkward to do and get into that position. So again, it's one of those exercises I kind of like but don't like at the same time. So it's not something I have to have in my workout programming, but I do lose that overall in my training. Now, I am looking for something like the bull bar coming out this fall, as that is another pull-up bar option I might be able to swap in here, and that's cheaper. So we'll see when the time comes if I go with that or not. I'll definitely be testing it when it comes out, but it is $300, so it's not the most cheap thing in the world. But we'll see when that time comes. But for now, this will be my go-to bench, as my other fiber ones are now sitting and waiting to see if I'll use the bull bar and bring them back into my normal workout programming equipment. But that's my experience and review of the Ironmaster Super Bench Pro version 1 after using it for 30 days. Now, if you'd like to check out my original video of what I thought of the unboxing, feel free to check out the video on screen. But with that, be fit and game on.